to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Scott Nordi, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, currently retired former athletic director, and birthday yesterday as we film this today. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. Let's catch up real quick. So what have you been doing since you got retirement? How many times you had that trailer out?
Well, we traded the trailer in on a motorhome, and so we've been out quite a bit since February. We got the motorhome in February.
And okay, tell us where you've been then.
Let's see, we spent half of September on the Oregon coast. Just went down all the way down the California border, and then worked our way slowly back home to Washington. That was a great trip. We spent 10 days in eastern Washington on a beautiful lake where I got to do some fishing, and just been using it as much as we can.
That is awesome. Well, let's begin by having you share with I'd say our audience in the United States, but we do have international listeners, so I don't want to put any pressure on you. So share with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, those types of things.
Well, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. I went to Tahoma High School, where I played football for my dad, who was the head football coach, and eventually the um, building athletic director there. Graduated from Mount Tahoma, went to Wenatchee Valley Community College to play football. Hurt my knee, and really kind of got into sports medicine as I was rehabbing my knee. And after I got my AAA at Wenatchee Valley, I went to the University of Washington, where I studied sports medicine and was an athletic trainer with the athletic department there. I got opportunity to travel with football and men's and women's basketball, track and field, and gymnastics and baseball. So that was kind of a great thing. And eventually got my master's in education through Lesley College in Cambridge, Mass. And that led me to my first teaching job. And I taught at Foss High School and coached 3 sports: football, girls basketball, and fast pitch. While I was at Foss, and eventually put my athletic training background to work as the athletic trainer in my off-sport seasons at Foss. And did that for about 15 years, coached and taught, and then got an opportunity to become the athletic director at Clover Park High School, where I moved over to Clover Park and spent 7 years at Clover Park as the building athletic director. And then my journey took me to Lakes High School, where I finished my last 8 years there as the building athletic director as well.
Perfect. Let's have you talk about your youth sports experiences in the Tacoma area, other than the fact that I'm assuming that half your baseball games got rained out in Little League. So
Yeah, we dealt with a lot of rain in baseball, springtime. Um, didn't affect so much soccer. I was a soccer guy, so it didn't bother us in the soccer. Basically, I played football and soccer throughout my youth, middle school, and high school, and then I was average. I went was going to go to the university or to Wenatchee Valley Community College in Wenatchee, Washington, as a football player, and in the August 2 days, I hurt my knee, and spent 2.5 months in rehab, and then that kind of got me going in my path.
Hmm. Perfect. Let's have you share with our audience the mentors, the leaders that you've had in your life that have made a big difference for you.
Well, I'd start with my dad. You know, his background in athletics and education is kind of what drove me. Funny, I watched him, you know, teachers go through that burnout phase. I watched him go through that, and I thought, there's no way I want to be an educator. I'm not going into education. I'll find a different path. So I kind of went down the athletic training path. Well, it came full circle. There weren't a lot of jobs when I came out of the University of Washington. You either worked for a pro team or you worked for a college team, and there wasn't a lot of money, and I couldn't live on it. So I went back to school, got my teaching credentials, and followed my dad's path. And I watched him as an athletic administrator, and kind of thought, eventually that's something I want to do. Be able to coach coaches. And so, um, other mentors, once I got into athletic administration, I had guys like Tim Graham, that I'll never forget my first national conference. Tim said, "You got to go to the national conference. You got to go." So I went and didn't know anybody but Tim, and he took me around and he introduced me. In fact, I think that's when I met you, Mark. He took me
Yeah.
around and introduced me to every committee chair and vice chair he could find. He saw something in me, and we had spent time working together doing state football here in Washington. We put on the state semifinals and finals in the Tacoma Dome as tournament managers, and so uh, Tim saw something in me and he pushed me, and I'll never forget that. Others, Dave Tikker, executive director of WSSAAA, I got involved with WSSAAA. He took me under his wing and really mentored me there. Dan Helsley and Dave Lutes, as I first got going, they were local athletic directors that both were highly involved with WSSAAA and pushed me in a direction that was one of involvement and getting involved and building that network. That was huge. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jim Piccollo, who was just a outstanding education-based athletic administrator that really got me going on my path to certification.
All right. Well, then you stole one of my later questions. So we'll just deal with the back half of that question now. The question was going to be talk about your observations regarding the legends in Washington. Of course, I consider you one of them now, but I think I had the names down, Timmy Graham, Tick, Piccolo, Lutz. So just you mentioned them. Talk a little bit more because these fellas, uh, you know, are legends in Utah and they're in Washington.
Well, I was really lucky to right place, right time when I got my start. And those guys, they've been around for years, and they knew my dad, and so they kind of took me under their wing and really helped me get my feet on the ground and get going and doing things the right way. Um, you know, kids first, education based athletics. Um, Being a rule follower, not um, somebody that is bending things, looking for the easy way. They just really set the way, and I wanted to emulate them. I wanted to be like them.
Perfect. Let's have you, well, let me ask you this personal question. What's one of the biggest failures or disappointments in your life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, I would say probably one of the biggest failures was when I was a young athletic administrator and I was filling a position that didn't have a lot of applicants for a head coach. And in fact, I only had two applicants. One had very little experience, and one had uh, quite a bit of experience. But along with that experience, he had a reputation. And
Mm.
I went with experience and hired the guy with experience and the reputation because I thought I can change him. I can make this work. And it didn't take long. It was a disaster from the get-go. The reputation, um, I should have listened to people that you call and do the reference checks, and they always glow. That you got to
Yeah,
do the backside and call the people that that know. And I should have listened to those people, but I only had two applicants, and I felt like this was the way to go. And halfway through the season, I knew that I had failed my kids. I did them a huge disservice, and we got to the end of the season and we made a change in 1 year. And it was on me. And I went in and apologized to those kids for the year that they had. It was not a good year. And what I learned from it was go with the inexperience sometimes, especially when all of those um, back channel nuances are telling you that's what you probably should do. Um, you can always mentor and coach a young coach to do it the right way and to do it looking at education first and doing it for the kids and not for themselves. That young coach doesn't have all that foothold. That experienced coach, it's hard to change their ways. And I learned that at a real young time. And um, I think that I made a lot of better decisions moving forward after that because I took those things into consideration and always felt like I was given a chance, and so I was going to be that guy that gave somebody else, some young coach, a chance and mentor them and guide them to do it the right way.
great experience. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let me ask you, Scott, and you were an AD for what, over 15 years, coach for longer than that. How has athletic administration changed, or how much is it the same since you first started?
Well, I think since COVID, I think I got out right as COVID was hitting, and I think that changed things a ton. Um, and I think the other thing that's changed things is what's happened at the collegiate level. And our kids look at that, and um, now with the transfer portal at the collegiate level and name, image, and likeness, the money that's out there, that's trickling down to the high school, and kids see that the grass is greener someplace else. I've got a better opportunity. I'm going to go someplace else. I think that the transient nature and the movement is really um, been a big game changer. When I first started, you went to your home high school. You
Yeah.
didn't transfer. You didn't move. You went to where your brothers and your sisters went, and where your family went, where you lived, and now you see kids going all the way across town to go to school because their football team's better or their basketball team's better, and I don't think you have necessarily that sense of school pride like you used to have. That's diminished.
No, I think that's well said. I couldn't agree more. We could get me going on the transfer portal and NIL. We could have just an hour just on that, but I digress. Let's
Ruining
get to your
athletics.
Yes, let's get to your journey with Wausau and then into the NIAAA. So you're back at Clover Lakes when you became, no, Clover Park when you became an 80 the first time back, what, in the early 2000s. So I'm assuming one of the legends you talked about, Timmy Graham earlier, took you by the hand, got you involved in the state association. But walk us through that, and then walk us through how you got involved once you went to the NIAAA.
Well, it really started with more at the local level. With in Washington, we're broken down into 9 athletic districts, or we were. It's changed since, and we in our area, Tacoma area, are in District 3, and uh, there was an eligibility board that would meet beginning of each season, and um, there was an open seat, and Dan Helsley and Dave Lutes encouraged me to get involved and to take that open seat. They told me it would help me learn the rules better and make me a better AD, and they were 100% right. I served on that board with Dave Lutes, and Dan Helsley chaired it, and there were 9 or 10 of us that looked at eligibility in terms of transfer. And when there were questions, it came before the board, and we would make those decisions. And I did that. And Dave and Dan were, at that time, they were on the WSSAAA board, and Tim Grahma was just got on the WSSAAA board. And Dave was, Dan Helsley was about ready to retire, and he was felt that as he did it, he would give up certain things before he pulled the plug on retirement. And one of the things he wanted to do was step down off of the WSSAAA board, but he didn't want to do it without having somebody that he was our vendor hall chair, and he wanted somebody um, that he would mentor and bring along in that role. And it was a District 3 seat on the WSSAAA board, and he wanted him to come in and get involved right away. He didn't want whoever replaced him to come in and sit for 2 or 3 years before they took an active role on the WSSAAA board.
Sure.
And so I said, yeah, I'd be interested in that. We held an election, and I was elected to replace Dan after a year, and I shadowed him. And so I got involved right away doing our vendor hall, and I chaired our vendor hall from the time I took over Dan's seat until the time I left the WSSAAA board, and grew our vendor hall and got going in WSSAA that way. And um, eventually then that gave me more leadership in WSSAA, and I went through the chairs and was a president and past president, and eventually our NIAAA seat came available, and Tim Grahma had been on the board, and I think he was on the board with you, and
Yep.
Tim came to me and said, you need to put your name in for that. You need to do that. And we had 2 people in our state that were interested in that seat. It was Washington's rotation for Section 8, and myself and Robert Polk. And so we held a kind of a mini election, and I was fortunate enough that they selected me. They wouldn't have gone wrong with Robert, but it was me, and I got to spend 3 years on the NIAAA board, and chaired the finance committee for 2 of those 3 years, and then went through the process. Was unfortunate I was never didn't get to go through the chairs and experience that portion of it, but we had a real strong board, and lifetime friendships from that board. And but when I rolled off the board, it was right when the fifth strategic plan was going to be written, and I was asked to chair the finance portion of the fifth strategic plan. So, and I felt like I got an extra year on the board because of chairing that, the being the chair for the finance portion of the fifth strategic plan.
Let me ask you a little bit of a follow-up. So delve more into, and I've asked this of other guests I've had that have been on the board, and maybe our listeners are tired of hearing it, but it's, that 3 years that you spend on the board is, you think and you hear from other people, but unless you're in that room, you don't understand it. It's such a great amount of work, but on the few times when you're off having a meal and not working, those are really some of the golden times. So talk about maybe some of your stories on the board.
Oh, we rolled on, my class rolled on, and had some really strong people, and we were getting it was the same year that Doug Kilgore would be getting replaced as the secretary, and so
Mhm.
I got to roll on with the likes of Josh Scott, who was shadowing Doug for a year
Right.
and became our secretary. Um, um, Todd Olson, who became our, he and I ran
President.
against each other for the presidency,
Right.
and if it wasn't going to be me, I sure would have wanted it to be him. So, um, but those outside of the board, I mean, boy, you go into that boardroom at 7:30 in the morning, have breakfast together, have lunch together, get done working at about 5 or 5:30, run back to the hotel, change clothes real quick, um, to go to dinner, and just the side conversations and learning about each other's families, and um, my wife now knows all of their wives, and it just
Mm,
the special relationship that comes out of um, a short 3 year time, and we only meet together in person really 3 times a year, and on Zoom. Well, when I did it, it was on the telephone. You didn't even get to see their
right.
faces. It was just a conference call. It wasn't a Zoom. Now they do it Zoom, so at least in April or in October and April they see each other. But um, eh, you get a lot of work done. You work real hard in the time you're there. But boy, the social aspect and the connections and knowing that you've got somebody that you can pick up the phone and call um, someplace else in the country that experienced something like you have experienced or that you may be going through, it's unbelievable. And I would tell anybody and everybody that I can, and I do, get involved in your state organization, get involved in the NIAAA in whatever role it can be. If it's if it's simply introducing a speaker at the national conference, that's a start. Get involved. The more you get involved, the more opportunity you have.
Couldn't have said that better myself. I think the NIAAA family, and in addition to that, the UIAAA family, the WASA family, I think it all trickles down. Obviously, without the NIAAA, we would have never met and
That's
had the
true.
friendship that we have. So let me follow up on that fifth strategic plan because I was fortunate enough to be uh, the programs chair, I believe. Yeah, the program. No, programs. It was I was the operations chair on the fourth plan. And so, talk a little bit more about what a special experience that is.
Well, you get this opportunity to work with folks that I've never met, most of them, eh, from all over the country, all the different sections, and to come in, and I kind of took it as an opportunity to let them have a voice. And um, yeah, I'd done 3 years on the board and served on the finance committee for 3 years, chaired the finance committee for 2 of those 3 years. I felt like I kind of had a pretty good idea of what the financial implications for the NIAAA would be or were at the time, and what our needs were. But I wanted those people that were serving on my committee to have that voice and to um, be able to put their thoughts out there and get them going. And from that, several of those people are now serving on the board, and
Mm,
uh, one, Lauren, is now our secretary. She was a member, and she was a silent member on our committee. She just was hard to pull things out. She's so quiet and reserved, and I see her now as our secretary, and doing her thing. It's just really rewarding to see those people get to grow and have that opportunity.
let's, if you can remember, because I can't, I think that might have been your plan was when Rich Barton was the operations chair.
I
I
think
don't
so.
remember who the programs chair was and who was the general chair,
General
if you can.
chair was Mark Armstrong.
Okay, Army, sure.
Yeah. And then Rich was operations, and Trish Whitkin was programs, I
Trish
think, or
Whitkin.
vice versa. But it
Yeah.
was it was Army, Trish, and Rich and I. And when I think back to that, and when I looked at our board, and I think, you served on the awards committee. I was fortunate. That's where I
Right.
did my committee work. Army was awards committee. Rich was awards committee.
Army was
Uh,
my vice chair on the
yeah,
committee. Yeah.
yeah. Um, uh, there's so many of us that did the awards committee, ended up on
Andy
the board.
Childs was my vice
Andy
chair.
Childs, yes. Um, and I was really kind of surprised to see that Lannis Robbins Lannis was a
Yeah,
awards committee member at one
right.
time. So it's just uh, a lot of people that I got to serve on committee with. Eventually, we met and ended up in the same boardroom together.
That's awesome. Share with our audience your recent, well, it's not recent, it would have been last December, your thoughts and observations about the conference in Austin.
The conference in Austin was awesome. The host committee did a great job of putting it on. The conference itself is always top notch. Um, I tell people if you ever have an opportunity to go to the national conference, go. If you have to pay for it yourself, do so. Once you go to a national conference, to not go is really a hard thing. In my career, in my 15 years as an athletic administrator active, there was one year we had a finance freeze and they wouldn't let us go and they wouldn't approve it. And I said, I'll pay for it myself. I'll let me go. Just give me the release time. And our superintendent couldn't leave the state because the money
Mm,
wasn't there. And so they wouldn't let us go, and that really hurt. That was the year that Barb Twartis went into the Hall of Fame,
right.
and it was in Indianapolis. It's the only one I've missed in well now 20 plus years.
Yeah, that's well said. What was the favorite part of your job as an AD, Scott?
Working with kids, um, doing doing things for the kids that the schools I tended to work in were ones that were a little bit lower income. Didn't kids came with not a lot, and so providing kids and helping coaches to provide kids with opportunities and experiences that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. We did things like small things like putting on team dinners prior to a contest. Taking them places, taking them to camps, taking them when I was coaching. We took our football team to Japan twice and had a team from Japan come here twice. Experiences that those kids to this day um, talk about. I run into kids and you remember when we went to Japan, Coach? Yeah, I do.
Mm,
Just um, I think that my as an athletic administrator, my job, my role was to coach coaches and to mentor coaches, but to also have an open door and to be there for the kids. And um, that was one thing I think I prided myself in is that kids would come into my office just to say hi, just to check in. Um, so oftentimes you're the bad guy, making them ineligible because of grades or whatever. And even those kids, Mr. Nordi, I'm eligible. Look at this. I'm eligible, and they come with that grade report. Those things just that put it over the top. That would make my day when those kids would come in. You didn't have to be the hammer. You got to help celebrate.
perfect. We'll finish up with a couple of three questions. The first one being, if you've got two suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator and they need to follow Scott's suggestions in order to become successful, what would your two suggestions be?
Well, number one would be to get involved. Get involved with your league, get involved with your district, your state, the local level, start someplace and get involved. And number two would be to find that one person or two people that will be your mentor and take you under your wing, and then be a sponge and listen to everything that they give you, because they're not going to steer you wrong. It's one thing I found in this business. You can ask 10 people a question and you're going to get 10 answers, and not one of those answers is ever going to be wrong, because nobody's going to try and set you up to fail. It's the job's too hard, and the people that have been in the job know that. And so to get that young AD past their second or third year, once you get them past that, they're going to be there. They're not going to go away. It's in that first 3 years that we lose them. And so I would say, um, to that person, get those people in your corner and listen to them. And then I would say to the older people, be that person that gets with those younger people and mentor.
That's excellent. Normally I finish with one question from here, but I'm going to finish with two, and my listeners are going to have to suffer through this. We had the unique experience. You had the experience. I just kind of helped you with my Utah knowledge. But because this is a Utah broadcast, I want you to talk a little bit about that great, would have been probably what, a 10-day to 2-week trip for you, that you came down to Utah. You did the Big Five National Park thing, and just talk about how special those places are in Utah.
Well, I you steered me, and because of the NIAAA, I had Utah connections, and you were one of the first people I went to and said, I'm going to do this when we retire. We spent the entire month of September in Utah, and we did every park, and we did multiple days in every one of those parks. And the beauty and the the magnitude of the beauty is just, to this day, those parks are the favorite ones. And that's been our retirement goal, is to get to as many national parks as we can. There aren't many that compare to Utah, and I don't want to slam on the Grand Canyon or Arizona, because it's a magnificent park and it's a wonder of the world, that canyon. But we had been in Utah, and then we dropped down into Arizona, and we're making our loop back up through Oregon and Washington. After we did Utah, we our next stop was the Grand Canyon. My wife had been, I had never been. We walked to the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I kind of looked down and I looked around, and I kind of went, it's a river. It's a big hole down there. It's way down there. It didn't come after seeing all of the grandeur and the beauty in Utah. It was really anticlimactic for me. And we've gone back and since, and I look at it, and I look at it differently. But in that trip, and at that very first site, I had just been to Arches, and I had been to Bryce Canyon and seen the hoodoos, and I was just, it's a big hole in the ground.
Well, that's I thank you for the Utah plug, because the Big Five in Utah, obviously Zion, Bryce, Capitol Reef, Canyonlands, and Arches. Been to multiple times, and I just remember. Well, I planned or helped plan the trip for you. I did the same thing for Donnie Bells from Indiana. I've had a couple of people call me, and you at least had the time where you could spend a little bit more time. But if you try to do it in 8 or 9 days, that's a tough thing. So thank you for sharing that. Let's finish with this. Scott, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask?
You're pretty thorough, Mark. You asked it all, I think. I don't know. There's I think, I've listened to your podcast, and I think that the big thing is just connect. Make those connections. We wouldn't be doing this right now if there wasn't a connection, if we didn't make a connection.
Sure.
The people that you bring on, there's a connection. And I've been fortunate to make those connections all across the country, and um, get an opportunity to go teach. And we just co-authored 718, the tragedies course,
Mm-hmm.
We rolled it out in Austin last year. You were asking about the Austin experience. I guess that was kind of a pinnacle for us in Austin, was to be able to roll that course out, and a much needed course. Unfortunately, the folks that wrote it have all experienced some form of tragedy and in their programs or in their building, and important course to get out there. And we've had now the opportunity to teach it here in Washington and some other states, and going to go down and teach it in Oregon next spring, and it'll be offered again in Tampa, along with every other course that we have. So it's, writing a course, that's another thing. It's, wow, never thought that'd be
Yeah.
something I'd do.
Well, that's well said. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Scott Nordi, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, currently retired, but former athletic director at Lakes High School in Washington, and member of the NIAAA Board. Thanks again, Scott, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Hutch.
All right, for our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.